All right, perfect. I think we're gonna get started. So thank you everybody for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I know the weather's bad and I feel like it's been a long week for everyone with work, but I do really appreciate you taking the time to show up tonight. So I'm Kara. I am the organizing project director at Homeline, and we've been hosting this series of webinars for about 2 years now, or a little bit longer. We originally developed these webinars because COVID just posed new challenges. There were lots of things with renters' rights happening, rent help MN, emergency rental assistance, and we felt like we were getting quite a few requests for information, everything from tenant landlord law to organizing, and the organizing work has definitely ramped up. So this was definitely part of a brainchild of Erin West, who is so graciously hosting for me tonight, and we'll be checking the chat and comments. But she's the lead tenant organizer at Homeline, and we've been doing this series for about 2 years, so we do have quite a few webinars now. I do want to put the disclaimer out there that this is not legal advice, tips, tricks, tools, but not legal advice. And for that, you would actually have to call our hotline. So with that, we'll get right into it. The series is, if you caught the little, the quotes, Homeline Depot. So adding a community meaning to your organizing tool belt. As community organizers, I know we are always searching for best practices, tools to use, anything like that. And we definitely want to share some of those and share some of the skills that we've picked up that have seemed to work best in grassroots organizing. So just a little bit about me. Who am I? I run the AmeriCorps Vista program for Homeline, which is a volunteer program. If you're familiar with the Peace Corps, the regular AmeriCorps program, all very similar. I'm also a tenant advocate, and I run the communications at Homeline. So I do the newsletter. You might have seen some of the social media that we do on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So I create some of those. And I'm also a grad school student. So I'm in the clinical mental health counseling program and wrapping that up this fall. And then I'm a renter. So I still rent. I've rented since I was 18 years old, and I'm now 40. So that's a long time. I founded an association on my property, actually, and that's how I got to Homeline. So my former property was having some challenges, and I got advice through Homeline, and they actually connected me to Erin. So she advised me on, best practices and how to get one started. And so we developed that and started for advocating for our rights. I just want to read a quote about my why I'm doing this webinar tonight. So renters need education of their rights, which is purposely difficult to find. As organizers, we face the unique challenges of COVID and bringing people together in a heavily online world. So isolation continues the cycle of oppressive systems, and technology can reach a wider audience, but many of us wouldn't call ourselves tech savvy. But if I can learn to do this, anybody can. So that's a little bit about why I wanted to bring some of those aspects into our organizing. So one of the things that I always want to make sure that I state is that grassroots organizing is centered in the community, and it's not about the organization. It's not about the tenant advocate. It's actually about listening to the community and always keeping the community at the center of our work. So with that being said, I am going to show just a quick 3-minute clip from a documentary called Sold Out. And that was actually a displacement situation that happened at Crossroads here in the Twin Cities, actually really close to where I live now. And you can watch this documentary online. It's free. I highly encourage you to watch it if you haven't. Homeline was part of that organizing campaign. But I'm going to play this first, and then I am going to just ask for some reflections afterwards.
Across the region, we're seeing many cases where tenants are either being exploited or displaced. Had some ideas about how they wanted to upscale the property and effectively gave notice to vacate 698 units.
there were 2,300 residents.
The new owners immediately put into place a set of policies designed to completely remake the tenant population.
You've been in a place for 15 years, that's home. For me to have to move, I lost all of that. It was really devastating.
We started getting inquiries from renters at this complex who had gotten this notice to vacate and were very concerned about what the notice said and what the new criteria was and sort of the new plans for the complex.
The ability of tenants to connect with each other and understand the problem and their rights and responsibilities is critical.
Some residents that were there was this realization that we're all facing the same issue and there is something we can do about it.
The residents filed a class action in federal court under the Fair Housing Act.
We'll see what happens with the lawsuit, but it set an example of this is a serious problem that needs to be dealt with.
But I am a survivor.
All right, so one of the things that I struggle with webinars sometimes is that I don't get the face-to-face. So I'm going to ask you all to throw some things into the chat. And yeah, I love being able to create some just dialogue between people. So after watching that, do you have a word or a words that you're feeling, a phrase, any reflections about what you just saw? Reflections, power in numbers, absolutely. Moved, yep. Definitely brings up some emotions for me too, no matter how many times I watch that video. Inspired, yep. Community power, the power of people. Awesome, thank you. Does anybody have any other examples of grassroots organizing that has been successful, or any organizing that they've done or been involved in that they feel like was a success or situation where community was empowered that you feel like a success? Feel free to drop that in the chat as well. And while you are dropping those, I am going to get us started on aisle 1 of Homeline Depot, which is meeting. Oh, sorry, I skipped a line. I love technology. So we're going to take a deeper dive into community meetings at this webinar. So there's lots of different steps leading up to a community meeting. Flyering the property, you could go door knocking. Afterwards, there is a collection of information process and doing one-to-ones. But if you're looking at your organizer toolkit, community meetings are going to be your hammer. So the thing that you use all the time, the most used tool in your toolkit. With community meetings, that's the ultimate goal. So whether you're organizing an event, a campaign, anything, it's always going to result in bringing people together, and there's going to be some type of community meeting that happens. So that's really why we wanted to dig in deep on this topic. So we're going to hit aisle 1, which is meeting promotion, first of all. So when you're taking a look at hosting a meeting, one of the things that is important is getting a chance to advertise it. And so that could be a use of a flyer. It could be, like we said, door knocking, but we love flyers because you don't have to talk to everyone. So that's the first point that I just want to hit. So you can see there's a flyer on the side, and this is it was a meeting that occurred about a month ago. And this one was a very specific reason. And so you've got to make a decision on when you go to a property, what's the purpose of it? Is it going to be just a general trying to engage renters, or is it going to be a targeted purpose? So you can see the questions. Were you concerned about rent increases? Has your privacy been violated? And so just getting them to think about some of the things that may have happened from things that you've heard to get them to engage with you. Less is more. So if you can keep it a little bit more simple, even this one, I feel like kind of has a lot on it, but one of the organizations did want their contact information on there to make sure that someone could contact them. And then just a little bit more about their host website. So graphics equal a message. That's the other thing, is you're taking a look at a poster or thinking about a poster on a wall. You really want something that's going to catch the person's attention. And so a graphic's a really great way to do that, even if they don't know what the event is. Graphic design apps are incredible. Like I said, I am not a tech guru at all. In fact, if you ask my friend that's a computer programmer, anything that he teaches that is for a really basic level, he tries on me first to see if I can do it. And if I can do it, it's going to work. So I personally love Canva. Really simple to use, really easy to understand, and it's pretty intuitive. So I enjoy that one. There are some options on there to upgrade to a professional account if you feel like you're going to be making lots of things. It gives you a few more graphics and options, but I think the basic account works really well as well. So you don't have to pay for that. On your flyer and promoting your meeting, you do want to list who to contact. There's probably going to be some people that wonder or need a little bit more information on the event. And in that case, you definitely want an email and a phone number that they can contact you at, of whoever is the point person that's going to be organizing this event. It also helps to have who's hosting on there. They can go to the website, they can look you up, they can understand a little bit more about who you are before you go into the actual meeting, which is definitely important for building trust. So I don't know if you guys noticed that, but there was a little square box called a QR code on that flyer. And I know you're asking, what do I need tech for? Kara, I'm an organizer. I don't sit in front of a computer. I don't need technology. But with COVID, I'm sure you have all had to use a QR code at some point. Restaurant menus are no longer a thing. You scan a QR code, it pulls it up on your phone. So people are very used to this. And now it's just something that's so common. I feel like I'm always pulling out my phone, scanning things now, when maybe before I would have skipped it and didn't even care what the QR code led to. But the nice thing about it is it does take you straight to a page. So tonight, some of you may have scanned it to register for this webinar. It's simple, it's easy, it's fast, and it's direct. It also is going to create engagement quickly, because I don't know if you're like me and you've ever seen an event on a poster and you think, oh gosh, I need to remember that. And 10 seconds later, you've already forgotten it and you forget the event until after it happens. And then something pops up where you're like, oh shoot, that was really one that I wanted to be at. So this way, it just eliminates that. You can scan it, you can register, and also most people have a cell phone, so it doesn't require a laptop or anything like that. And I know everyone's got their cell phone on them all the time. Just the last point is it's professional. It's gonna make your flyer or your advertisement just that more enticing because it's got that on there. So how to create that? I did a little step-by-step. And so this is the QR code step-by-step instructions. And I'm not going to explain these right now, but it is literally 6 steps that are so simple. You can probably have one created the first time in under 5 minutes for sure. And now it takes me about 120 seconds to make one. So very, very simple. So I just want to ask the question, and feel free to type it in the chat. Does anyone have any suggestions, things that they've used that are any other graphic design apps, anything that they like to use that is on a flyer, technology focused, anything like that? But if you have anything like that, please feel free to throw that in the chat. And if not, that's okay too, because I know I didn't know a lot about it before. All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide. So we're going to make a stop on aisle 2. And graphics are, again, a great way to engage your audience. And your graphics should equal some type of message. So it's figuring out how to translate your message backwards into one picture. So I'm going to give you a couple examples. So if you're, and drop your answer in the chat if you can, if you're looking at the left side of your screen and the right side of your screen, if you were walking by that poster, which one would you think is more engaging, or which one would you look at first? The left or the right? The right. Yep. And Eden, if you could type in the chat too, why do you say that? What about just one or two things that caught your attention about the right side? And I'm going to continue about colors and pictures. Yeah, the colors, the pictures. So one of the things we were trying to translate on this one is that knowing the law isn't enough, and that it may not change a landlord's actions, and that's why we organize. And so little person looks like they own a lot of houses, the boxing gloves, and then community power. So it translates that all pretty quickly into just 3 little symbols. I'm going to give you one more. And again, instead of focusing on the words, I just want you to look at the visuals. So if you're looking at the bottom and you've got the power symbol, you have a group of people standing in a power stance. Even without seeing the words and what it's about, you could probably already start to feel the emotion behind it and guess a little bit what this poster would be advertising. So that's really the goal. Once again, is to create an emotion or a feeling that they see, and then it makes them want to check out your flyer or your poster. Okay, so now you've flyered and you have gotten the calls. You've got the meeting set up, you're ready to start planning this meeting. So we're going to stop on aisle 3, which is considering inclusion and accessibility. And this is your pre-meeting planning. So when I say inclusion and accessibility, when we're talking about grassroots organizing, we want to empower people and empower communities that may not have felt empowered. And the way that we do that is by including as many people as possible. But with that, there are some considerations of us as tenant organizers on how we meet the community and meet their needs. And I know there's a lot, and so we're not going to get to all of them, but there are some best practices and some core ones that really need to be considered before you're planning your meeting. So community needs. One of the first ones that you're really going to want to think about is the language needs. So do you need to have your flyers translated? Do you need to have verbal translators at your meeting? One of the things that you really need to try to gain information on when you're out at the property and meeting the community is understanding what languages are predominant on the property. You know, we always say default at minimum English, Spanish. But you may meet a community that is 90% Somali, and you need to make sure that you find a translator to do that for you, written to written. Your community might be largely Hmong, and so just understanding the language needs before you go to the community. Also, location. The closer to the property, the better, and it definitely needs to be accessible, handicapped accessible, but also when we say close to the property, a lot of people we recognize don't have cars, don't have transportation, and the closer that you can get it to the actual property, the better. You know, some places have community rooms that they can use, although we want it to be a safe space where people feel comfortable to speak and talk their truth. So it may not be on the property if the community feels there could be retaliation, if there's fear around the landlord, that may just not be the right place. So always doing a little consulting too, like I said, with the community to figure out what is best for them. If you can provide food, water, snacks, that's fantastic. You can ask for donations if your organization doesn't have the funding for that. There's lots of different community orgs, faith-based organizations that many times will help chip in for the community. The fourth thing, date and time. So really considering what works best for the folks that are there. So if they're working, It might be nights and weekends, but again, make sure you ask one of the community members. I actually just had this happen at a meeting yesterday. Before, when they asked me to send my time blocks over, I just assumed night and weekends. And so I sent the email, here's what I have available. And they wrote me back and said, actually, it's a property with lots of moms and the kids are away at school. So can we do it 11 to 1? And I was like, yeah, and that was out of, it was just out of the typical of what I usually do. And I don't have kids, so I wouldn't have thought of that. So that ended up going much better just because, I asked. The next thing is just promotion of it. So flying a couple times, doing it once probably isn't enough, because if you're like me, I need a reminder. So it could be a week and a half to 2 weeks that you flyer the first time. And then, 3 to 4 days before the meetings are really kind of great timeline to throw out that second flyer. Also, bring a community member into this if you can. So again, I know I keep going back to this, but listen to what the community needs. Again, this isn't about us. It's not about our schedule. It is literally meeting the community where they are and providing the best experience that fits their needs to get everyone here. So we are going to hop right into the outline and the facilitation. So now you've got your base built, you're ready to have this meeting, you've thought about all the accommodations, and now we're actually going to host this meeting. So what I have up on here is a community meeting outline. Now keep in mind that organizing is an art and a science. There is no one correct way to do it. And so some of this you're going to have to take contextually and apply it to your situation of the property that you're at, the size of the group, all those types of things. And so this outline actually lays out some of the considerations for your organization or the community organizers that you're working with as well. So the first thing, just introductions. Always start with thanking everyone for being there. They're taking time out of their day to come listen to a meeting that definitely is going to most likely directly affect them. And, they probably had kids to get ready for bed or school, and they've got to, they had work. They've got all sorts of things going on. So just make sure that you genuinely thank the property. Then just go through and do quick introductions. I would just be like, hi, I'm Kara, I'm a tenant advocate, and I'm with Homeline. And again, keeping it in very simple terms. So I would not go onto a property and say I'm the organizing project director. I would just say I'm a tenant advocate, because that's what people need to hear, and that's what they are going to understand the best, that I don't have to explain my title. The next thing that you're going to want to make sure that they understand is why you are there and what you're going to provide. So you have to decide what the goal is of your whole meeting ahead of time, and explain your organization's role. So are you an organization that just wants to connect with renters? It's going to be very general. You want the community to know that you're there to provide resources. And that's pretty much it. You're just trying to make a general blanket so they know about your organization. Are you an organization that's heard there are challenges? And that would be that targeted flyer of really directly saying out loud and speaking the truth of, these are the things that we've heard. So that would just be more of a targeted meeting. The last thing is, you could be there for providing specific assistance or specific resources. So emergency rental assistant, rent help MN, that would be just a couple examples of that. So just always explaining and being very transparent with the property. Now these agreements, this is going to be completely dependent on the size of the group that shows up. So the larger the group, the more of a chance of it going very long. And again, you want to respect people's time, and you also want to make sure that everyone has a chance to talk. That's why they're there. They care, they're concerned, and they most likely would love to use their voice. And so just being able to make sure that everybody gets that platform for a couple minutes. And it's just really simple. At the beginning, you can say, hey, we want everyone to get a chance to speak tonight. We want to hear from everybody. So we're just going to set up a few guidelines just so everyone gets a chance to participate. And first one would just be, please try not to talk over each other. Let the person tell their story. If we can try to keep stories and sharing to under 3 minutes a piece, just so we can get to everyone. And then just, can we save all questions till the end? because we would like to just kind of knock them out all together, because we might answer one of the questions in the rest of the presentation. So just pre-setting it up that way, so that people know what to expect. And then you're not interrupting someone and they feel weird about it. Like, why did that person cut me off? They just understand that they can now formulate their story to be an elevator speech. The next thing is a renter's rights presentation. Now, this is going to be completely optional. You're going to have a Q&A at the end after the presentation, but you may have a property that just wants general landlord renter legal, not advice, but legal guidance. And we can have someone come in and do a renter's rights presentation. We can give you a webinar for people to watch. There's a couple different ways that Homeline can facilitate that, but that's one way to do it. Or you may just realize that you just need a couple specific pieces of information. And in that case, we can get you a PDF or something like that to share with the property. Now, with that being said, the smaller the meeting, like I said, the more of just the engagement you can start right away. So Juan, that's actually on the webinar today, he and I were at a property yesterday, and it was a very small group. So it was about 12 to 15 people. And we just started it with the introductions, and then we simply just asked for their stories. We said, we're here to listen to you. Why don't you tell us what's going on? Because we weren't really sure what we had yet. That entire meeting was so productive, and all we did was really sit back and we just took notes. We logged things, we took notes, we asked questions, but we talked very little, maybe 10% of the time. And that's why it was so productive, is because it was community led and it was centered around what they wanted to focus on. One thing you can do as tenant organizers to make sure that the information that you're getting does not get lost, and also that it's easier to compile. I know that is one thing that's really difficult when everyone's taking notes on all different topics. Then you try to come back and put them all together, and someone has to type them out. And if you're like me, I just keep running notes. The topics are everywhere. A really easy way to do that is pre-print sheets that have a few headings. And these are the things we typically see on properties: repairs and emergency repairs, management, loss of housing, and sanitation. Things typically fall into those 4 buckets. And then you can just have your organizers that are with you, filling things out on the correct sheets. And at the end, they just all go together. Makes it so much more simple. And you can scan those in if you like, and then just drop them into a Google Drive that's shared between all of you, so you all have each other's notes. I'm gonna skip to the next slide. So one of the things that that I know I've said probably 5 times already is centering in the community. But when we think about grassroots organizing campaigns and why they go well, it is because we're giving people the autonomy to make choices that are best for their community. That is typically one of the things that is happening to them, is they are experiencing oppressive systems that don't allow them to have a voice. And so we want to reverse that cycle, provide resources, provide leadership training, and allow them to set their own goals, their own mission for their campaigns, and do what's best for them. So Merriam-Webster definition is self-directing freedom, and especially moral independence. So again, it's going to center them, not the organization, and not you as a tenant or a community organizer. You want to try to avoid doing harm to the community, and that's the way that you do it. Not assuming that the things that are right and good for you are going to be good for everyone, and really listening to the community when they're telling you things. One of the other important pieces and goals of grassroots organizing is organizing for sustainable power and capacity and power. And what I mean by that is, again, providing the leadership training tools to teach a community leader that then is going to turn around to their community and teach those people how to do it. And those people are going to teach other people how to do it. And if you can think about it always as a leadership training moment, and then teaching them how do they utilize that, how do they pass it on, is going to be key. Another thing that you can always do is, identify different opportunities in leadership for them. That could include a class. It could include a webinar. Neighborhoods Now from Cura is an incredible community organizing leadership training. All of us took it here at Homeline, and that was something that one of the vistas that I supervised last year recognized a tenant leader at one of the properties and then got her to interview, and she was accepted into the program. So not only is she a renter and an organizer at her property, but now she has incredible organizing training. So we just, really took her organizing tool belt and added a ton of different opportunities for her to use that power. And then the last thing, after your meeting, if it's worth doing, it's worth reviewing. Organizing, like I said, is an art and a science. It's just not a one-size-fits-all approach, and it never will be. Communities are diverse, situations are diverse, the environment's diverse, and a lot of those things outside we can't control. We don't live in a vacuum. So very much be welcome and open to critiques, to self-review. The more that you take a look and analyze what you liked about what happened, what you thought could have gone better, and then be able to adapt that to the next situation, you're just going to get more practice and become a better organizer. Because again, there's no right way to do it, and you do have to really think through the situation contextually. But there are a few review points that I would always suggest that you review with your organizing group. So what went well? What would you like to see differently? What challenges after this do you foresee from that meeting? Who could provide some advice for you or some mentorship? What resources would have helped for the next meeting that's going to be similar? And where do you find those even? And then does the community have feedback? So maybe you are in connection with a couple of the residents, and you definitely want to make sure that you ask them for their opinions as well. So with that being said, these are some of the resources that we can provide at Homeline. If you are a community organizer, a tenant organizer, if you're a tenant leader in a building, we have numerous webinars that are always available to watch. We have different renters' rights trainings that we can do, and we are actually hoping to create another webinar that is taped on a general renters' rights presentation in the future. We can offer some strategy guidance. So maybe you are dealing with a situation that you've never gone into on that property. Feel free to reach out to us and ask for just a little bit of mentorship on that as well. We love collaborative organizing efforts. If you see something that you think that we would want to be involved in or could be involved in, definitely give us a call or email us, and we can talk about what the logistics of that would be and what makes the most sense. One of the most important parts of Homeline, we have a hotline for renters. This is a free attorney-backed hotline. Eden on the call is actually one of our attorneys, and we take calls from any renter. And we can really help people with individual situations. And again, we don't do individual legal representation, but if they do need it, we can help provide guidance on where they can call different organizations to do intakes with for that. And then last but not least, just form letters. So if it gets to the point where you do need to have a legal letter around a statute, around a tenant landlord statute, we have form letters on our website that have pretty explicit instructions. So they're really easy to fill out. And again, if that's confusing, call the hotline. I just wanted to I'm not going to read all these, but I wanted to highlight a few of our organizing webinars. Like I said, Erin has been planning and working on these really hard for the last 2 years. So we have a really good variety of different situations that you're going to organize in, and then also just some tips and tricks on escalation of organizing. For example, just how to engage public officials on policy and renters' rights. So. And then I just wanted to provide some of the information on how you would get a hold of us. So the hotline is the first number. Again, it's for any renter to call in Minnesota. So not just the Twin Cities, we actually serve the entire state of Minnesota. And according to the Attorney General, we are the only organization of our capacity that does a service like this for an entire state. So other states have local local attorneys and local places that you can call, but nothing is to this capacity. And then also we have numerous attorneys on staff to get free advice from, and that also is pretty unheard of. So my information is next. I'm the organizing project director. And then I also put Erin's on there because, like I said, she guided me through a lot of this when I first started organizing, and she's fantastic. The other thing, we'd love to have you follow our socials. So if you want to do it right now, go for it. But we have been trying to really do some step-by-step tips and tricks that apply to renters and to community organizers. It might be something that you want to specifically target one of our posts and get that out to the community, because you're seeing that they're having a lot of problems with heat issues. We actually have one for that. So we also do policy calls to action that are developed by Michael Dahl, our policy director, who is amazing at giving you templates, easy steps. If you want to call the governor around renters' rights, he has like a 2-sentence template for you to just read off. So some of those things are really, really effective. And especially if you're looking for easy advocacy things, that's what we also post. We also do a newsletter. So sign up for a newsletter. We do that once a month as well. But that's just a few things that we are doing with communications work. And again, trying to spread the word. It's kind of like virtual flyering before a meeting. And with that, I would love to take any questions. I do have a couple that I'd love to ask you all, but I'm going to absolutely take your questions first.
All right, feel free to put questions in the chat and we can answer them there. Thanks everyone so much for being here, and thank you, Kara, for this wonderful webinar tonight. It was really exciting to hear about all your experiences hosting community meetings. They can be really challenging.
Yes.
I'm not seeing any questions right now. So one I had for you, Kara, is what is a common blip or challenge that you run into in hosting community meetings, and how have you gotten around it?
Erin, did you want me to answer that?
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Sandy. I appreciate that. So one of the challenges that I personally have run into is how to engage renters around one common goal. So the first meeting happens and everything can seem really wild or intense if the property is having a lot of problems. And so it's easy to get caught up in trying to, like this and this and this and this and this, and it gets really challenging in your head because you're like, how am I going to solve all these things? And just helping guide the property and understanding that individual situations that are happening inside their apartment that aren't a collective community issue would be something that you can just call Homeline for. On the other hand, if it's a property-wide issue, that would be something that we could organize around. Pet peeves are not something to organize around, and I'm pretty explicit on those things. So, if it's something that they're like, wow, my neighbor's kids are really loud. Well, kids are, going to run around, and that's just not something that you want to try to organize around. But yeah, definitely if it's a property-wide problem, that's what we're going to try to, for sure, organize around. But also those sheets that I was talking about where you're filling them out, those are really useful too, because you're going to start to see one page that all of a sudden has a lot of things on it. And so you're like, okay, I'm identifying this as an actual issue that we need to discuss as a property. Thanks for that question, Erin.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Getting folks on the same page and getting consensus about what issues to move forward collectively.
Yeah.
Big challenge, but
yeah,
that's what's powerful too.
So I have a question for everybody that's here. Going back to just accommodations, considerations, one of the things I think is always interesting is different areas have completely different considerations. So even in the Twin Cities, like I'm in Bloomington right now, and I've lived here since October. Before I lived up in Como Park, the communities, while some similarities, are very different. And what are some different either cultural considerations, accommodations, things that are happening in your community that that you'd want to consider if you had a meeting, or that you would want to try to accommodate to if you were going to have a meeting in your area? And I know there's a lot. We covered 7, and I'm sure there's at least 30.
Also, if anyone wants to come off mute, you can raise your hand and then we'll be able to let you off mute. So feel free to do that if you'd rather speak your answer.
Yeah. Oh, Sandy, that's a great one. That public transportation ends at 5 p.m. I would never have expected that. And, you know, up here, if I showed you right outside my door, the metro's about 10 steps from my door, and it runs almost 24 hours a day. So I would not have thought about that. Thank you, Harry. Yep. Languages, time, meeting places. Harry, I have worked with you before. I've crossed over with you before. And it's totally up to you. If you don't want to, you can just absolutely type no in the chat. Do you want to come off mic or come off mute and speak to a couple of those things? Because you are organizing about half a mile away from me. And you always have such great thoughts. And if not, that's totally okay too.
I
Okay.
think I did just, yeah, great, good.
Okay, I'm sorry. I had a problem coming off mute. I couldn't find it. So I was, oh my gosh. So with languages, many of the things that I'm finding is like we have a lot of language barriers because we have someone who speaks Vietnamese and some who speak French. And I didn't even thought of that, you know, because I was like, oh, we have to get some Arabic and African languages. And then one of the guys were like, well, we speak French. And I was like, okay, well, I did not even think of that. And then Spanish. So it's like trying to accommodate everyone so that they know. And I did learn a little bit of Vietnamese to talk to one of my neighbors. And then my neighbor was like wanting to have a larger conversation. And I was like, yeah, I only YouTube for like 22 minutes. So this is it. And I don't know why I chose these phrases. So it seems like I'm more local than a beginner. So that, and then with time, it's like, when can people meet? Because people have work and they're working overnight or during the day. And our largest barrier is really a meeting spot because we don't have one. So it's like meeting in someone's home. We were meeting at the park before. Meeting at the apartment is virtually impossible. So, and we haven't tried Zoom yet, but it is really hard. And one thing I didn't mention was animosity. Like, people want to be anonymous because they're afraid of like the repercussions before things happen. So they want to live safely in a home without causing any problems. So that is like one of our biggest barriers.
Mm-hmm. Perry, thank you for speaking to that. There's actually 2 things that I want to touch on from what you said. One was that you haven't tried like doing a Zoom meeting yet. And technology, again, as it's really great, it also can be a barrier. And so, you know, if you're in a community that doesn't have a lot of computers, a lot of people don't have internet, that's for sure something that you're going to have to figure out. Emails, maybe people don't have email. One of the things that we have been finding that works really, really well is, I don't know if everyone's familiar with the Signal app, but it is a text app. It all works the same way. It doesn't matter if you have an Android or an iPhone, because I know that's a big fight. I'm an Android person. But it's a really easy app for anyone to use. I know, like, it's like everyone has a phone. It's really secure as well. And just starting a thread, you know, so you can notify people about the meetings and things like that. Emails are great if people have email, but Signal's really easy if they don't. Another thing that you said is just the fear of retaliation with landlords. It's very real. It's not that it doesn't happen. One of the things that we always say is, like, when we go into community and they want to organize, you can either be an unanonymous and everyone puts their name on something, you know, endorses it. We've agreed we're gonna all come together. We have a large group of people because there's definitely power in numbers, but there's also power in anonymity as well, because the property landlord may not know who's all involved, and that does protect the property, especially if there already is some indication of retaliation. So with that, the property can create an email, you know, like if it were where I live now, which is a condo, but it would be the Reflections Residence or something like that at gmail.com. And then the only communication that would happen is through that email to the property manager or to the property owners or to, you know, PHA or whoever that you're communicating with. It would just be through that email with no one's names on it. And that's the only way communication would happen. So again, really protecting the residents if it is something that you're concerned, and there's a large concern about retaliation. So just a couple easy ways to do that. And like Perry said, languages can be difficult. And so reaching out to your partner organizations to just ask if they know anyone, if they've crossed over with people that have some different translation skills. We're pretty fortunate at Homeline. We have a great kind of variety of languages that people speak, and we have multiple people that can do some translations written to written, which I know is very difficult at times, and so we're very lucky that way. But we've definitely had to reach out to other partner orgs when we, you know, maybe needed a flyer translated last minute and we didn't have anyone. So just using resources like that. Again, there's always third-party translators. They are a little bit more expensive, but one of the things that we have done on general flyers and ones that we know are going to use again is, you know, we've had them do the one for us, and then all we have to do is replace the date, time, and you know, update that for the next event. And so the cost, which might have been a little bit higher, actually ends up being very affordable because we're going to reuse that flyer, or we're going to reuse that announcement in whichever language it is. So that's just another way that you can think about stretching your money, because I know at nonprofit orgs, a lot of times there isn't a, you know, just a massive, endless amount of funding. And so just, you know, really partnering with other people, using a network, building a base of people that you can go to that can really help you out. I know I talked a little bit about Neighborhoods Now. It's another way as a community organizer to build your community organizer network of power, is taking trainings like that. At this point, I still stay in contact with at least 10 of the 30 that I was with, and we have all helped each other, shown up at events. Actually needed another Spanish translator to go out on a property a couple weeks ago, and sent a message out to the whole cohort. And immediately, you know, one of them was like, yeah, I can absolutely make that. You know, what time do you need me? And, you know, she came out, we had 3 Spanish translators then, and we needed every single one of them. So it was great she could make it, but definitely thinking about who you can ask and not being afraid to ask. You know, people can always say no, but make sure that you are using your network. And, you know, if you know someone that has a lot of other connections, just asking them, can they put out an ask to their network? So I'm huge on staying in touch with contacts and really forming communities that way, because also the more partner organizations that you're in contact with, the more skills and the more tools that you're going to have to use or have available to use with the communities, because they all most likely hold a different expertise. So any other questions? We're heading up on about 6 minutes to go. And if not, that is okay too. Any other questions?
I have a question
Yeah.
because it's mainly about how do we convey, like, we're working on this and it takes some time because many of the residents, they want things done like immediately. And I don't even understand like time frames and like explain that to them, because I just assume like it's going to take some time, and they're more anxious about like, how come this hasn't been fixed today? And while we had a resident group, we still do. Some people have moved on,
Mhm.
and now we have new people, and it's just like, how do we keep the work going?
Yeah. Oh, Perry, you hit one of the biggest hiccups, walls, and challenges in organizing is keeping the momentum going, right? One of the things that I will tell you is that is just normal. There's going to be an ebb and a flow. And I think being really honest and upfront with people about that, and helping people to understand that this is a marathon, not a sprint. And while unfortunately we do want things to get fixed as quickly as possible, it doesn't always happen the way that we want it to. The thing I will tell you though, is the more the community comes together and is there to also assist each other, assist on the property. Just an example on my property, we were having some weird things happen with sanitation, trash cans overflowing, like, yeah, just I know it was a little thing, but it just was causing a lot of disruption on the property because it was happening in every building. It was messy, it was unclean, and it wasn't getting fixed by management, even though we had all come together. And, you know, we basically decided on, you know, hey, we've got this group of now 170 people. Let's just set up a plan between all of us and take care of it. And so while that wasn't the answer to get it from the property, we just decided to band together and start doing some things. And within that whole process, people overlapped more. They met each other. They got to know each other a little bit better. And that kind of inspired people to want to help, to want to be involved with the movement, because they just knew their neighbor a little bit better. And I think that's one of the most important things to highlight is, regardless of the process and how long it takes, knowing community is really important, and also actually committing to helping out. So maybe it's flyering, maybe it is doing the graphic part of it, maybe it is you know, going out and talking to people, maybe it's helping organize an event. There's all these little things that people can do, and I highly suggest getting as many people as involved as possible. The more people feel involved, the more they're actually going to contribute to the movement, and so making them feel involved. I know as a leader, sometimes like my mistake has been that I get, you know, really amped up and I'm like, oh, I can do all this. And I'm thinking that it's taking things off people's plates so they don't have to do it. But in the long run, I'm actually doing it all. And so then people just kind of assume I'm going to do it or expect me to do it. And they just don't get as involved as they need to. And so again, empowering the community. And then Perry, I would say just being very transparent, like, hey, like, some of these things are going to feel like they move quick and we get a win. And then some things are going to just feel like they move slower. And so if we can create a communication chain so that we can talk a little bit and update each other about, you know, what we're doing and the process and where it's at, can really help as well. Allie, so when you're living in a building, is it okay to post flyers that state more than just want to know about your housing rights? Can you post specific things like, are you facing repair issues? Can you put flyers under doors? Another question, if you don't go to a property that you don't live at, what can you post? Ooh, good question. There are definitely different rules and regulations at some buildings, but for the most part, just a general flyer of, do you want renters' rights information is not a problem at all. Also, if you hear specific things about, you know, the property, you can definitely put that on there. We're organizers, so we are not residents of the property. So us coming onto the property and flyering, the landlord calls me, I'm not that upset. If they're mad that I put up a flyer, I don't live at the property. I don't have to deal with the consequences, and my name's on that. So that doesn't involve a resident yet. The one thing I'll say is I always tell residents when they're like, can I do this? Can I read your lease? Most of them don't say anything about flyering, putting up notifications, but if it does, you know, you want to try to fall within that guideline. But for the most part, there's not that many rules. And actually in some situations, like a Section 8 voucher program development, there are some protections actually built in, like they have to allow the residents to host community meetings if there's a community space within the building. So there are some different protections, but those are all a little bit nuanced. So definitely email me if you want more insight on that. Yeah, within your boundaries, for sure. Yep. And I always say, check your lease first and just read it real quick, but of that section. But for the most part, you know, if you're going to a different building, we've had it happen before. Sometimes the landlord isn't happy that you flyered, but you're handing out renters' rights information. And a lot of times in those buildings, you get calls. It's not surprising as to why. So it is 7 o'clock right now, and I want to respect everyone's time. But I don't see any more questions. So thank you. I just want to say thank you. Yeah, thank you to everyone that showed up tonight. I really appreciate it. I know for me, energy was low this week. I had a lot of work to do. So I just really appreciate everybody making the time to show up tonight.
Thank you, Kara, for all your incredible insights and your welcoming presence and for everything you shared tonight. And I'm so glad to see everyone here tonight. I hope you can make our future webinars and continue to engage with us. We love that you're here. We support the work you're doing. You're all incredible.
Thanks, Perry. I hope everybody has a good night.